Perfect. All right, Senator, let's get right into it with the Epstein files. Now, regarding these files, members of the public feel like there haven't been consequences for the DOJ's handling of them, let alone for any of the information that has been revealed so far. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, they're absolutely right. The administration did not follow the Epstein Act. By the way, that was my bill in the Senate that was passed, and my it was the clone of the bill in the House. And so I've really been immersed in this. And what was released was only a portion of the files. Yes, a lot, some 3 million pages, but of an estimated 6 million pages. And of those that were released, a lot of them did not delete the information related to the victims, which was required by the law. So a lot of victims were re-victimized by that, including nude pictures and references to their presence. And in addition, they deleted a lot of powerful people from the files, which is absolutely not allowed by the act. And so they have absolutely failed to follow the act and release the information. And we have to just keep pressing. We did try to add a series of penalties. So Senator Schumer and I went to the floor to ask unanimous consent to kind of put some teeth into the law, saying, listen, if you don't obey this law, there are more significant consequences. And the
Um,
Republicans objected to that unanimous consent request.
what are some of those consequences? Do you have any reasonable expectation that they are or are not coming?
The Republican majority is absolutely blocking there from being any enforcement of this bill. And I've called out the hypocrisy of all 100 senators saying, yes, we want the files distributed, knowing that the administration would simply fail to do so and that they would fail to hold the administration accountable. By the way, we need to keep pressing on the second set of files. These are the files that in Treasury Department, and they have the suspicious activity reports, or referred to as SARS, $1.5 billion that flowed from the Epstein empire. And when you have the amount of money, who it went to, when it went, that's an incredible trove of information about how this vast international criminal conspiracy that groomed, abused, and raped young girls and women operated. And we need to get those files as well.
Now, I know you've petitioned the Government Accountability Office for a full review. If that review goes through, do you believe it will have an impact? And if so, what sort of an impact?
Well, the General Accountability Office reports do get a lot of publicity. They're very nonpartisan. They're very competent, and I do think they'll have an impact. I'm determined to get as much of a press to continue this conversation towards accountability for the perpetrators and justice as much as can be achieved for the survivors.
Is there any last point you want to touch on before we pivot to the war in Iran?
Well, the administration did everything possible to get this off the front page,
Mhm.
but people can understand what this is about. This is about powerful men feeling they can abuse for decades young women, including raping them, and get away with it, no consequences. Lots of people are being held accountable overseas,
Mhm.
including a member of the royal family in England, former prime minister of Norway. Here in the United States, no one has been held accountable. Why not? It's because this administration is hiding the evidence.
Briefly, you mentioned that they're doing everything they can to get this out of the front page. Do you believe the strikes in Iran are connected to that?
There's a more complicated story about the strikes in Iran, but I think it's one of the maybe contributing reasons that
Mm.
that Trump was tempted to go to war without getting an authorization.
All right. Well, getting into the actual war itself, the administration said yesterday that the recent increase in oil and gas prices is, quote, temporary, and this operation will result in lower gas prices in the long term, end quote. Should Americans believe that? Why or why not?
No, absolutely not. There's nothing about this that will lower gas prices. In fact, the administration is seeking to export more natural gas out of the United States, which means They are seeking to raise the prices of natural gas inside the United States, setting aside the war. And the war can only raise prices. When you cut off 20% of the gas and oil that travels around the world, you're going to raise prices. A lot of fertilizers go through that strait, and that raises prices for agriculture. And I know the farmers in Oregon have already been talking to me about the high cost of inputs, and often they're referring to the high cost of fertilizer. This is cranking that up even further. And everybody sees it when they go to the gas pump. I mean, when you see that additional 50 cents from the Trump war, it is very, very real. But this war, we have to understand, probably has no good outcome. Experts have said there's a multiple of possibilities. One is regime change, extraordinarily unlikely. When we assassinate the president of another country, even people who oppose that or that supreme leader, even then, it triggers people rallying to their religion, rallying to their flag, and that's what we've seen happen in
Mhm.
Iran.
Now,
And so,
apologies.
very unlikely to see regime change. Regime modification, when Trump said, I want to see what happened in Venezuela, I want to pick the leader. Very unlikely for that to happen, for Iran to say, oh yeah, Trump, you can be our supreme leader and you can choose what we do and you can choose who leads us. Not happening. The possibility of a mutual ceasefire where both sides just declare an end and then they both declare a victory, that's possible. But realize that you're talking about a devastated state, a state in which we didn't just assassinate the head of the country, we assassinated a whole range of the leaders of the country down several levels. And the new leader, we killed both his wife and his children, or at least his son. And so the hatred that is emanating from Iran right now on a vast scale, widespread scale towards the United States will damage our ability to solve problems for a generation to come.
Now, following yesterday's classified briefing, your fellow Senator Blumenthal told reporters that, quote, we seem to be on a path toward deploying American troops on the ground in Iran. Do you think that's where this war is heading? And how long do
I
you
can
think Americans can expect this to take?
Let me speak to two issues from a declassified setting. And that is, there's a lot of conversation about the United States putting troops on the ground to recover about 1,000 pounds of 60% enriched uranium. There's also a lot of discussion of putting troops on the ground to seize Karg Island, which is where the bulk of the Iranian oil is exported through, essentially to put a chokehold on the economy of the country. The country's already suffering. Realize we've killed a lot of civilians in these assaults. We have hit oil refineries that have produced black plumes of highly toxic smoke that's hovering over Iran's largest city. There's a lot of impacts. And realize we're paying a price. We have 7 service members who have died. We have a lot more who are injured. We are spending an estimated $1 to $2 billion a day of national treasure. And so it is an enormous damage to us. And because we launched a surprise attack in the middle of negotiations, and it's the second time we've done that, the world doesn't believe that we are serious and reliable when we're engaged in negotiations. So that is there's a lot of side effects we have to understand here.
Do I have time for one
Gentlemen,
last question?
very
It's okay.
short.
Uh, Given the failure of the War Powers Resolution, what can Congress actually do regarding this activity in the Middle East? Is everything just at the whims of the president?
Well, the Republican majority is basically refusing to have a serious debate over this. The Foreign Relations and the Armed Services are not holding any oversight hearings. In fact, they've hardly held a single oversight hearing in the course of the year plus of the Trump administration. The 60-day clock is running, which after which Trump, by law, must come and get an authorization for the use of military force. I think the goal of the administration is to wrap up this war before then. And even if it means just going, hey, we destroyed your country, we reduced it as close as we could get to the Stone Age, and we're walking away, and that's your problem, which leaves a festering, failed state where a lot of bad can happen. There can be an enormous impact of refugees. flooding out of a failed state. We saw that with Syria. There can also be a lot of other conflicts that arise as different groups decide to carve off pieces of Iran, like with the Kurds, for example. And so there's a lot more reverberations yet to come. Almost every war has surprises. It isn't clean and simple. Venezuela, decapitation of their leader and installation of their vice president, that's a very rare event like that. Somehow Trump thought this would be something like that. He couldn't be more wrong. We're already paying in injuries, in deaths, in treasure, and destruction of relationships across the world.
All right. Well, Senator, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to get this recording stopped.